You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Before I get started on today's episode, I do want to give a little call out to all the art teachers who have been listening. It was an honor and a privilege to get to present at the Art of Education University's Now conference this summer, where I talked about gamification and things like the Arts Madness tournament, which can be great to get your students really critically engaged in exploring art history. Hint, hint, remember, I'm doing it again this spring, and I'd love to have you and your classes join me in it. But I'm also excited that I'm going to get to present this winter. I hope you'll join me in the winter conference at the end of January, where I'll have a presentation on classroom management. So if you haven't already, make sure you register for the Art of Education's Now conference.
I feel like who art ed?
Try to slice it.
Who art ed? Mr. Wood art ed me.
Yeah. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, where we explore visual arts in an audio medium. I'm your host, Kyle Wood. And just a reminder, I put in episode-specific cover art so you can see an image of the work from this episode and every episode if you listen on a platform like Amazon Music, Spotify, or anywhere else that supports that feature. Now, today, we're going to be looking at Alexander McQueen. McQueen was born March 17th, 1969 in London. He was the youngest of 6 children. His father was a taxi driver. His mother taught social sciences. His actual name at birth was Lee Alexander McQueen. Interestingly, some people say that he went by Alexander professionally because in the early days he was struggling financially and used his middle name so he could still claim unemployment benefits using his first name. Lee Alexander, whatever you want to call him, he was interested in clothing from a young age. He started off as a kid making dresses for his sisters. He left school at 16 to take a course in tailoring at Newham College. He then apprenticed at Anderson and Shepherd's. They were tailors in a posh area in London called Savile Row. And after he finished his tailoring apprenticeship, he got a job as a pattern cutter. So basically, he did a lot of the things you would expect, working his way up in the industry. When he was 21, he applied to be a pattern cutter mentor at Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design. He wasn't able to get the job, though, because while they recognized he had immense talent, they just felt like it would be really weird to have a 21-year-old teaching other 21-year-olds. So instead, they encouraged him to apply to study at the school instead of teaching there. He did, and he got his MA in 1992. His first collection after graduation was called Jack the Ripper Stalks His Victims. He had a bit of a flair for the dramatic right from the start. But people were into it. He was actually one of the youngest designers ever to be named British Designer of the Year, a distinction he earned 4 times between 1996 and 2003. But for today's mini-episode, I am going to focus on the Jellyfish Ensemble from his 2010 collection, Plato's Atlantis. It was a spring-summer collection. This was the subject of a full episode I recorded with my fellow art teacher, Goldie Robinson. We recorded that about a year ago. Now, what strikes me about McQueen's work, especially in this collection, he's inspired by a lot of nature. And this particular piece, the Jellyfish Ensemble, we see a silhouette of the sleeve echoed in the hem of the dress. It captures the essence of a jellyfish without becoming like a jellyfish costume. I think that's the key to his success. He's very dramatic in what he's doing. I mean, these animal-inspired pieces could very easily go costume and cartoonish, but he keeps it sophisticated, and I think a lot of that comes through the fine tailoring. We see his pieces are so solidly constructed, and I think that's because of that experience he had in his formative years doing that apprenticeship as a tailor. In this piece, we see just masterful craftsmanship. He's applying this embroidery and, I don't know, metalworking sequins. I can't even quite tell the material he's working with, but it's so inviting. It has this shimmering sense to it. You just want to touch it. You can almost imagine how it would sound as the model is moving through space and the fabric is moving, and all of these little embellishments on the surface are hitting the light in different ways and flowing and moving. It's like a jellyfish. It's not quite fixed. It's fluid and in motion, and yet it's all so perfectly tailored to fit the wearer. Now, as a man who regularly dresses like he has no fixed address, I'm a little bit out of my depth talking about fashion. But if you want to learn more about Alexander McQueen and his jellyfish ensemble, the piece up in this year's Arts Madness tournament, I'd recommend you check out the link in the show notes where you can hear the full episode and hear from Goldie, who knows a whole lot more than I do. This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.